Welcome, everyone. This is our Spring 2021 Career Talk series. Tonight, we're going to have our spotlight on the counseling psychology program and specifically focusing on school counseling and mental health counseling as well. Sorry, my PowerPoint. There we go. Okay, so welcome. My name is Erica Johnston. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as the Assistant Director of Career Development here in the College of Education and Human Development. And we also have our fabulous program coordinator, Dr. Wildermuth, if you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, welcome everybody. I am excited to get to see some of our alumni here. I haven't seen them and talked to them in a while, so it's always very exciting for me. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and I am the program coordinator. I'm also a graduate of Temple, so Temple mate right here. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have or even afterwards, but I can tell you that I'm, again, excited to see our alumni here to share their experiences and what they're doing since they've graduated from Temple. So welcome.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to start with a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous Persons of Color acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we sit and occupy today as the traditional and ancestral home of the Lenape and other Indigenous nations of the Schuylkill and Delaware River. Without them, we would not have access to this gathering and to this dialogue. We take this important opportunity to thank and honor our original caretakers of this land, and we additionally acknowledge the African ancestors that were enslaved and utilized and built upon the land taken from these Indigenous nations. I'd like to now take a moment to introduce our three alumni panelists. So I have some biographical information on them. We have Ami Kumar on the line, who graduated in May 2017 from the Counseling Psychology program and is currently working as a clinical research coordinator at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia within the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. She is looking to continue her graduate education as well as getting married this year, which we just found out. In school psychology, combined clinical and school doctoral programs. We also have Gina Amoroso on the line, who graduated in May 2017 as well from the Counseling Psychology program. She spent the last 4 years working on political campaigns as a political fundraiser and campaign compliance expert. Her clients include local, state, and federal candidates for office. And Leah Hennessy is also on the line with us, who is a May 2020 alum from the Counseling Psychology program and is now currently serving as a school counselor within New Jersey. So at this point, I will stop this presentation, allow our fantastic panelists to introduce themselves, and we can just engage in an authentic, quality dialogue together for our students and alumni on the line who are interested in counseling psych. Okay, Ami, Gina, Leah, feel free to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I can go first. Erica gave a great introduction of my background. As she mentioned, I'm a research coordinator at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We focus on a lot of school-based research, so just interventions that are happening in and out of the school, primarily with elementary age students. So if you guys ever have any questions in relation to research or school-based research, I'm happy to answer any of those. And also, as Erica mentioned, I'm kind of on the journey of going back to school to get my doctorate in school psychology. And so if anyone has any questions just about that process or just their interest in it, I'm happy to also answer those questions.
Hi, I'm Gina Amoroso. I graduated Temple in 2017 with my master's in counseling psychology. And then I took a really hard left turn out of that field. I had spent most of 2015 and 2016 and 2017 just volunteering on some campaigns of some local candidates. Some friends of mine were running for office. I obviously got involved in the 2016 presidential election, and never really thought it was anything more than just volunteering and, offering any kind of skills I could bring to a team. And very quickly after the 2016 election, I was getting approached about professionalizing my experience and moving into a different field. And I wasn't totally sold on that for some time. And then after I graduated and I started my job hunt, I kind of just stumbled into this career. I have no political background. My background has always been psychology. I was a psych undergrad with a criminal justice minor. I thought I was going to get my PhD and go to law school or something like that. So in 2017, I started taking some campaign jobs, kind of like what was mentioned in my bio. I've done a little bit of everything from local, state, federal kind of races. And then right now I am the executive director of the Delaware County Democratic Party. I've been here since last year. 2020 was quite a ride. So I find that, and we can talk more about this, but I find that a lot of the skills I have is really applicable to a lot of the work I do, even if I'm not applying it in the traditional counselor clinician kind of role. The stories I could tell about how many of my skills I've had to use is long and extensive. And so I think that as you are thinking about what it is that you want to do and how you want to use your degrees, it doesn't always need to be in the traditional way. And I've really grown from that program and have been able to really utilize what it is that I learned and the skills I gained in an everyday non-counseling kind of environment. So yeah.
And hi, I'm Leah Hennessy. I use the pronoun she, her, hers. I graduated from Rowan University in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in history. And then I just went straight into grad school and graduated from the counseling psych program in, this past May 2020. And I now work as a high school counselor at a high school in New Jersey. So, I was on the school counseling track when I, got my master's in counseling psych. So if you have any questions about, specifically what it's like to work as a school counselor, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you all for those even more detailed overviews of your current context and your overall goals. So I want to kind of open up the floor to any students and alumni who are on the line who are here because they're clearly interested in these fields. You can direct your questions out to a specific person or just kind of more generally, and then everyone can kind of pop in as needed. And feel free to also put questions in the chat as well. Matthew, yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So my biggest question for everybody here, alumni and the expert panel alike, I've recently been kind of struggling in what graduate degree to pursue, because for me, I would love to be a therapist. I would love to be a counselor, whatever the moniker is nowadays, whether in a school setting or in a clinical setting or even a private practice. Being a therapist, being a counselor is my main goal. The more I've thought about it, the more I've come to realize that getting a PhD is not necessarily the best. It doesn't seem like the best track for me because of the research aspect. I'm not really interested at all at doing research. I'm more interested in the clinical component, as I mentioned. So my question to you guys, having been through the process and having been through, having experience in the field, is do you think it would be more beneficial or a smarter move to go for a master's or a PsyD in counseling psychology as opposed to a PhD in clinical psych?
So I'm going to jump in just for 1 second, Matthew. Great question. Something that I think I forgot to kind of mention, and I'll talk just a brief moment here about Temple's program, is that there are the 2 tracks. There's the mental health track, which is what Ami and Gina were both on. And then there's the school counseling track, which is what Leah had mentioned was on. So with that, our program prepares students with a master's degree to, if you're on the school counseling track, that you can apply for certification in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, whatever state it might be. And then on our mental health track, that upon graduation, once you take a licensing exam and you complete all of your hours, you are prepared and you can apply to obtain your LPC, which is a licensed professional counselor. So some of the letters that were after my name, besides the PhD, were the NCC, which is a national certified counselor, and then a licensed professional counselor, which is what I am here in Pennsylvania. So I share that because you don't have to have a PhD to practice as a counselor. Like I hold my LPC and could do in private practice if I wanted to. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but I will put that out to the ones that went through the program and have considered doctoral masters. They can answer that better.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I actually was in a really similar position to you when I was thinking about, like, after my bachelor's degree, what I wanted to do. And for me, I was in the same position. I had done some research backed stuff when I was in Temple in undergrad. I'm not a really big research person. It's just not my jam. And I really wasn't sure that I wanted to completely dedicate myself to a PsyD and, the 6 years and paying for it and that kind of stuff. And so I found that going for mental health counseling and obtaining my LPC in this other world that I live in was going to be perfect, because you get to do all the stuff that you want to do, be a therapist, a clinician, private practice. I personally wanted to be on college campuses and focus on that demographic, but I definitely got to experience that in this program. Both of my internships were basically one-on-one. At the height of my second internship, I had 12 clients a week, and really got to see, like, oh, this is what it's like every day to be a therapist. And so if that's kind of where you're at, I totally recommend the program. You really get to see what a therapist is, and gain all the skills that kind of prepare you. And so that if you want to go get your PhD or PsyD someday, you definitely can, but you can also like work, get your hours, get your license, and then the PhD and the PsyD are just extra after that.
Thank you so much. And I just want to write this down. So it is the mental health track in Temple's master's program.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And going off of actually what Gina was saying too, I definitely agree that the program really does a good job of giving you that feel of just between the classes and the coursework, but also like when you do your internship and practicum, what it's going to be like when you're out there in the real world, in a sense, being a therapist. I'm very similar to you, Matthew. At first, in undergrad, I did not like research. It was just not my thing. But ironically enough, in the master's program, there's not a research component required unless that's changed. But it was something that I was kind of interested in again at that time, and I love it now. So it can change. And, I think it depends too on the opportunities. But for me, going through the program and getting a really good sense of what it could be like being a therapist every single day, I found that wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so that's kind of why I went into more of the research world and why I'm looking to pursue a PhD now. But I definitely agree that it's a great way to learn more about it, to get a sense of it. And also okay to know that, like, if that changes, during the program or after, that's also okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I had a question. So I'm actually finishing up my master's in higher education at Temple and work in admissions. So I've kind of been trying to figure out what my next steps are. And I've been tossing around the idea of potentially transitioning from higher ed through K through 12 education. I don't necessarily want to be a guidance counselor for high school students, but I'm interested in being like a college access counselor, helping them through specifically the admissions process, because I've worked with, counselors that's their specific role. So I was wondering, what the appropriate steps would be for requirements for a position like that, if any certification would be required in Pennsylvania.
So I can answer that, but I am going to also let Leah talk about Leah's experiences, because she also has college access experiences here from Temple University. So there is not necessarily any type of certification to do college access work, academic coordinator kind of work. I do know the higher ed program has, Dr. Paris teaches a couple of those courses. I think there's a certificate, but I'm not quite sure of the 9 specific credits or 12 credits that are in that program, since it's not our area. But it does prepare students, you know, for that kind of programming. So, but I will turn it over to kind of Leah, because Leah can share her experience being in the school counselor program and what that meant for her, especially with the college access. But I also totally forgot to mention, and I have to say this to Leah, Happy National School Counseling Week, because it is National
Me
School
too.
Counseling Week. So totally forgot to say that. So, but I'm going to turn it over to Leah because I know she's got great experience in that.
Yeah, so I actually was kind of debating, you know, I was kind of stuck between both routes too. I really liked like the higher ed, like, you know, college access piece of it. And, you know, as a high school counselor, you really do get a lot of that. Like it's a lot of like college access, which is great. You know, mental health and like academics is also a piece of it. But I really like working as a, you know, school counselor in a high school. I've really enjoyed the experience I've had helping students, you know, apply to colleges, get into colleges, you know, make those decisions. I think it's been a really great experience. But while I was in the counseling psych program, I worked as a college success coach with a dual enrollment program that Temple has called Temple Education Scholars. I know like Jennifer Johnson, you said you were in the higher ed program. You might have had her as a professor. You know, she's involved in the program, but it was really great. We worked with students, high school students in the school district of Philadelphia, who, you know, wanted to take classes at Temple while they were finishing up their senior year of high school. So we worked with them on like the college application process. Financial aid was a big piece of it. That was, you know, really, yeah, it was really a great experience working with the students and, you know, through that program and helping them kind of, you know, figure out what they want to do and where they want to go after high school. So that was, you know, a program I got to be a part of through the counseling psych program that I really enjoyed and really got a lot of good experience from.
And I know you're in New Jersey, but did your role require certification for being a counselor?
Yeah, so I'm certified in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So, you know, I got the certification in Pennsylvania first, and it was easy to, you know, transition that over to New Jersey because they have reciprocity with each other.
I had a quick question in regards to the program specifically. Is there a class or something that stands out from your time in the program that you really loved? Like, what are the classes like? Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
That's an awesome question, by the way.
Great question, but I'm going to have to definitely think about that one.
I have to say that actually internships class, when you start getting into going to your site, you have to take a class where you get where you talk with your classmates and your professor. I had Dr. Wildermuth. It was awesome. And you just talk about your caseloads and how you approach different situations, and you hear what everybody's kind of going through, and you have to, you know, share a recording of yourself and get feedback from it. And we just had a great class. Like, Ami's one of my best friends, to be completely blunt. Like, we have another really good friend who is in the program. Dr. Wildermuth is great. And so to hear so many different perspectives of like, oh, I like how you said that, but if it were me, I might have said this. Or, you know, I noticed that you went down this path of what she was talking about, but what about exploring this one and that kind of stuff? And it made me a better counselor. It made me a better student. And it was just like one of those, you have to do it the entire time you have internship. So it's both semesters your last year. And it was amazing. I loved it.
We had a fun class. And that was my first year teaching at Temple that Ami and Gina both had me. So I learned a lot even I share this because I learned a lot even as a faculty member, just from their experiences in the classroom. So I think that it's a great class. I love teaching internship. I love teaching any class I teach, but internship can be a real growth experience and really gives you the foundation of who you're going to be as a future counselor.
Yeah, I definitely agree with internship. I think that was a great one. Another one that sticks out to me, actually, as much as it was always nerve-wracking for me, I think this was during first year, was group counseling. And that's, you know, your first year. So a lot of it's nerve-wracking because you're like still like refining your skills. You're still just learning about a lot of different processes. But it was always just interesting because at least when we were there, the way it was laid out was the class was kind of split into two groups, I think. And so one group would happen and then the other set of students would kind of observe, and then you would kind of switch off based off of that. But it just really pushes you out of your comfort zone. So you're not only like learning about the process, but you're also like learning about yourself and what, you know, you should and shouldn't do. So I think that class was one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, I agree with group. I definitely agree with that. It was, yeah, nerve-wracking, especially as a first year, but you definitely grow a lot as a student. I thought it was really beneficial in the long run. Another class that sticks out to me is the career counseling class we had. I've always had an interest in career counseling to begin with, but you know, I had Dr. Wildermuth. She was amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better professor for that class. But we also, you know, talked about like, you know, how to build a good resume. We wrote cover letters that are going to be really helpful, you know, in the job application process. So I just found that class to be really interesting, really helpful in the long run too.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, they're not paid to say that, by the way. Like, I haven't seen I have not seen them like, or talked to them forever. So I just want you to know they're not paid to say that.
I just had, Leah, you said that you graduated in May.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I'm like, time is a construct. So I'm like trying to make sure that that was during COVID.
Yes. Yeah.
How was that? I was like, it wasn't. How was that were you online, and did it transfer to online? How did that go in terms of coursework and internship and all of that?
Yeah, it was interesting. Dr. Wildermuth could probably say the same too. You know, March, right before spring break, we heard that, you know, COVID was spreading and the, you know, university shut down. I thought we'd be, you know, like you didn't know what to expect at that point. So it happened really quickly. You know, I was able to finish my internship online. Luckily, my supervisor, you know, worked with me on getting online hours. I met with students virtually. I did some other like busy work for the school to get, you know, those internship hours in. But, you know, Dr. Wildermuth worked with us really well. All our professors, you know, were great throughout the whole process. You know, they made it as smooth as possible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this. Our program is not meant to be an online program. So if you're seeking an online program, I'm going to tell you, I do not encourage our program. It's not meant to be that. We really do like human interaction, and we think it's very important in the counseling relationship. So I share that because we did have to transition, right? We've all kind of had to make this transition and adjust and change our lifestyles in many of ways. But it's taught us a lot about the field at the same time, of where there are barriers and where there are needs. And at the same time, we had to adjust to what does it mean to do telecounseling? What does that look like? And even how do we incorporate that into the curriculum? Because that's not something that was really in our curriculum, because we weren't really doing it. So it's one of those pieces where we learned a lot of adjusting and creative ways to evolve and change with the profession. But obviously our preference is not to be online. It is to be back in the classroom. I love seeing my students. I mean, like if we were here and they know I'm not a hugger, but they know that they would all get a hug from me because I would be so excited to see them. So I would ask for permission first, but with all of that, you know, it's one of those pieces that we're not meant to be an online program, but we will do what we need to do to support our students to get them to the places they need to get to.
I can keep going. I have another question on the note of online and everything. And you might not have the answer to this, but personal anecdote, I was going to go right to grad school, but I've decided to take a year off because of everything with coronavirus. And I do want it to go to a grad program in person, because I agree that I think the human interaction is just so important. So I was wondering if you knew, like, when do you think that you would be back, I guess, even this year, or do you not have any idea when you would be coming back?
Students find things out before I do sometimes. So, you know, in all seriousness, I really don't know. I mean, those decisions are made from the university down to the college, down to, you know, so it takes a long time and lots of thought I think goes into that, right? So like safety first and that kind of a plan. And I can tell you that the fall we had planned on being in person. So for the first week of classes, I actually taught in person. There's somebody in here that actually was in one of my classes in the first week in person. So our plan was to be in person, and then we went online, and I had developed all of my courses as if I was going to be teaching for 15 weeks in person. That did not happen. This semester, I'm teaching 2 courses, and they're all online except for in person twice. So midway through the semester is in person, and at the end of the semester is in person. Students still, if they're not comfortable coming to campus, whatever the reason might be, maybe they decided to stay in their location in Alabama, whatever the situation might be, we'll have them Zoom in, and we'll make those accommodations, whatever needs to happen. But our preference is to be in person. I don't have those answers, but what I will say for anybody that's even thinking about their plan, and I can't speak to, I know Leah said she came right to school. I don't know Ami and Gina's experiences in taking time off and coming, and I know Ami's taken some time before, looking at doctoral programs. We as a program, when we're looking at applications, taking time off and whether it's traveling, taking a job, whatever it might be, that's also an experience. So I don't want people to think that they need to go right to graduate school, because you need to find what time is right for you for graduate school. So I think that's an important thing. We just want to know, what did you do during that year? What were you doing? And I think that that's kind of an important piece. So just to think about.
Yeah, actually, I took a year off between, and I like had 3 jobs, because it's really hard to find a job with just your master's in psychology or your bachelor's in psychology. And I knew that. I knew I was going to go get a master's or a PhD someday. So I was a volunteer at a sexual assault organization, like taking calls. I was a deli meat cutter at my high school job on weekends, because they paid me good money under the table, and I was a waitress. So like, it was a good experience. I needed that year to take a break, because it really can run you down. And your master's, it's less than 2 years if you do the full time, but it is fast. It is nonstop. There's summer classes, and it can really it can get to you. And so taking that year off and getting my mind right and adjust it and figure out, which programs do I want to do, enjoy my senior year while also doing that. Like, I have absolutely 0 regrets about. It was probably one of the best decisions I made, because I don't think I would have made it through my master's if I went straight through just where I was when I graduated my undergrad. So I'm a big proponent of it. Just wanted to pop that in there.
Yeah, thank you. It's very validating, because that was, my plan was one thing, but it feels right. It feels right. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think just, you mentioning like it feels right is very telling, right? And I think, because I'm very similar in that sense of like, you envision things going a certain way. But I think just based off my experience of taking this time off, obviously I didn't take off time from my undergrad to my master's, but me going back to grad school has been like a blessing in disguise, in the sense of like, you just experience life a lot more too. And I think you grow as a person, which is really important before like jumping into a big program and kind of dedicating yourself to something that'll be, potentially your career. So I am all about taking however much time you need.
And I just want to add off of that, and I think that the alumni here can speak to this, is that we also look at a very diverse cohort in many of ways, right? So we look at diversity in lots of different avenues, but sometimes it's what was the experience you had, whether your classmates have just come from graduate school, whether it's a change in career, or undergrad, a change in career, international, like whatever that might mean, because the field and the world is diverse. And so we want our classrooms to also reflect that. And that's something we're also working to continue to improve, and to have our program look and be more diverse. But I share that because I think sometimes students get hung up that they need to have taken certain classes, or they need to have certain experiences to get into graduate school. And that's not always the case. It's not always about the test scores. It can be about who you are and what do you bring when you come into a program, right? So like your personal statements for graduate programs are really important. It's the opportunity to get to know you. we do interviews for our program. So once we go through the application process, candidates are interviewed and meet with faculty members. And while that can be very nerve-wracking, it's a great experience because we get to meet you, you get to meet us, and at the same time, we learn more about you because a test score, which we don't even you don't have to submit you don't have to submit your GREs, but it tells us a lot about who you are, and you get to interact with other people that are interested in the program and faculty. So I share that because I don't want anybody to, I just went on a little tangent, but I share that because it is about what can you bring and what are your expectations and what are you going to do for you during the program. And this is not going to be the first time that alumni have ever heard me say trust the process, because it's a process. Graduate school is a process in your development, in who you are and who you're going to be.
This is also a moment I'd like to plug university-wide career support and services, as well as within the College of Education and Human Development. So for any students or alumni of the College of Ed and Human Development that are on the line, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to support you with any of these processes. And also just, if you're from, I know we have some folks from public health, social work, CLA that are on the line. You have, in-house career support at the college level, and then also the university-wide career support too. So we have Mark Coloco as our sort of point person who does a lot of graduate student programming, specific workshops for personal statements and, coming up with financial plans if you are going to pursue a graduate program. So for any students or alumni on the line that might need to think through the financial piece of the personal statements or the interview process, like you have a whole network of folks both at the college level and at the university level to support you in thinking through that.
Mark is also a graduate of our program, just saying, putting that out there, and works in career services. But I would put a plug in, even from my own graduate experiences. My undergraduate's in sociology and criminal justice. My master's is in counseling, and my PhD is in educational psychology. I utilize the career services at my university and my master's, actually both my undergraduate at East Stroudsburg to get into graduate school, but at the same time in my master's to help me find a job. And I often say this to students to remind you, you are paying for those services. That tuition bill that you get includes these services. Erica is fantastic. Mark Coloco's team they're there and they're wonderful. Utilize those services because they are experts and they have connections and network and resources that even us as faculty members don't know that they have. So I really do want to put a plug in for them as well.
This may seem like a kind of maybe a stupid question, but in the completion of the master's in counseling psych, not just from Temple, but from anywhere, does that put you in qualification for the LPC, or does that already get you an LPC?
It's a great question because a lot of people think that they'll become licensed as soon as they graduate. No, but you are ready to go. So all of our courses meet the Pennsylvania Licensing Board's courses that you need to have the 60 credits that you take. Our internship, our practicum experiences all prepare you to sit for the NCE exam. Ami, did you all take the exams yet? I don't know if you took the exams. I know that some of their peers that have graduated have since become licensed. But with that, you have additional requirements that you need to do upon completion. And that doesn't matter what program you go to. If you go to a counseling psych program, you go to a counseling education program at a different university, the bottom line is that you will have to do additional work after you graduate to obtain your license. The thing that's different where sometimes it gets confusing is school counselors get certified right after they graduate. Mm-hmm. So that's why it can be confusing, but school counselors can get certified. But if you're going for your license, you have to continue on with getting supervision and doing things.
Okay, thank you.
And even then the process is still confusing, but
so
we work through that.
Yeah. So I guess then that MED that you get, that master's, that could you then become, I mean, obviously, you have to become licensed in a state, that's a must have, but could you also acquire, work and counseling jobs and therapy jobs, while in the process of being licensed and studying for that? I'm seeing a bunch of nods.
Yeah, because we're all nodding like, Ami and Gina, I'm going to put that out to both of you because you have, I mean, I can speak to my experiences, but you know better just by your peers that have graduated and what they've kind of done to gain that experience.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of two friends in particular who I still am in contact with. One is, her name is Nicole. She went and she worked at an advocacy group. She works at the Domestic Abuse Project in Delaware County. And she had somebody there who was willing to be a supervisor and was willing to, sign on knowing it was going to take her 2-3 years. She just got it, I want to say like late last year. And then a friend of ours, Felicia, is actually a school counselor who also is trying to get her her hours in. And I believe she's doing that at her job and has also found a supervisor. It's a long process. I mean, they're the two people that come to mind, and we graduated almost 4 years ago. But a lot of them is, you're applying to a job and you say like, hey, like I'm looking to get licensed. Is there anybody here who can supervise me? Or you can pay for a supervisor. So a lot of folks that we graduated with did get, clinical jobs, therapeutic jobs where they could at least utilize what they were doing at their job to get supervision, to get their hours. I mean, I don't know if you remember anybody else.
Oh yeah, those two people definitely come to mind. There definitely were a couple other people. I think Monique was one of them. But I agree with everything Gina mentioned. Typically, from even my experience looking for jobs after graduating, and though I ended up in the research world, I did apply to a lot of different therapist jobs. And same thing, it's usually someone has to kind of be on site to be your supervisor, or like Gina said, you can find an external supervisor, but typically they have a sense of like, you're a new graduate, you're on your way to getting licensed, and they have a sense of like what your requirements are to an extent. So you can definitely work as you're making your way to that for sure. You don't have to wait.
Good. Thank you. But so there is, okay, now I'm seeing, because, and I didn't know this because before it was all get your doctorate, get your PhD, get your PsyD. Now I'm thinking about this. I'm like, wow, this is, that's really not impractical, but it doesn't make sense to do that right now for me. So it's undergrad, internships, and everything. So master's, then you get licensed and you get, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
Got a lot of other students and alumni on the line who haven't necessarily asked questions or kind of ideas or concerns, but we still have 18 minutes left. So feel free to unmute yourselves and share those thoughts.
Hey guys, my name's Kevin. I'm still in the program. This is my first year. The only thing I want to comment on that seems to be a little bit unique for the decision that I made that maybe a lot of people might not go through, but I actually transitioned from my first semester as being full-time into part-time. And if anyone was wondering, is there a lot of rigidity? From my experience, it's actually been a pretty fluid choice to make, and like an opportunity that actually isn't that difficult. So in terms of like other types of constraints when you're thinking about the program, is that there is quite a bit of wiggle room. I was actually surprised at the type of creativity that you can actually choose, especially switching to part-time. And so if you have questions about like flexibility and stuff, I think the whole program isn't as rigid as it might feel. And that if something's holding you back there, I think there's a creative way to adapt around your specific needs. And it's been so easy that it's almost been like an unimportant change, although it was the right decision for me to go from full-time to part-time.
Thanks, Kevin, for sharing that. And that is something I think that you also have to find if full-time is right for you or part-time is right for you. I think that's a really important thing to consider and what that looks like. So my master's and my doctoral program, both I did part-time. I know others have done full-time. I personally that's just not me. I need to kind of space things out a little bit longer. So I think that that's something really, when you're looking at different programs, whether it's at Temple or another university, what does part-time mean mean, and what does full-time mean for you? And what does that mean also from a financial perspective? I can't answer those questions because that's not my area, but what I can say is that that is just something that you need to also find that when you're looking at graduate programs is what is that going to mean and what is that going to look like, especially if you have a plan out there.
If folks feel more comfortable, you can also kind of drop questions in the chat or just let us know, like, are you a current undergraduate student? Are you an alum of Temple thinking about it? Any other, just so we get a sense too of also who's on the line. Suppose I should have done that temperature check in the beginning.
I have an unrelated question for Dr. Wildermuth. Are you perhaps related to Michael Wildermuth? Because
I am
he was
not.
my AP Psych teacher in high school, and like I've never met anyone with the same last name.
That is crazy. No, I am not, but that is fascinating to hear. So no, I'm sorry, I'm not. But
Okay.
that's really cool that there's a person with the same last name that teaches AP Psych, right?
I know. I was like amazed by it.
I know it's such a non-common name, and it's interesting because my maiden name is actually Baumeister, and when I was writing my dissertation, there's a Roy Baumeister who has done a lot of work in self-concept and self-advocacy and what that looks like, and I was fascinated, and I needed to reach out because that's just what I did, and I was like, "Hi, are we related?" We're not, but it was still one of those things that it was really cool to connect with an expert in the field to know that they had the same last name. So I actually am going to answer. I see in uh, the chat, the PhD isn't being offered in counseling psych. So what I can tell you is that I don't anticipate that a PhD in counseling psych will be offered for some time at Temple University because we are in the process of seeking MPCAC accreditation. And that is our number one priority for our master's program is to obtain that accreditation first. Once we obtain that, our anticipation is bringing back the counseling psych program and working through getting that to be an APA accredited program. So that is a process. Accreditation is just a process in general. So that is not something that we'll be offering as a PhD at any point in time. So I hope that answers that question.
So we have someone joining us from CLA's Careers in Psychology class. That's great. And we also have an HGCE student on the line with a concentration in human services. And can each of you sort of talk through what the day-to-day responsibilities and experiences are like of your jobs, which is a great question.
So the role of school counselor, it's honestly, it changes every day. Honestly, it depends on what time of year it is, what's going on in the school. As far as like for each, class that I work with, the seniors, the big thing is college. But of course we help with, if they're struggling with classes, and then, personal issues, if they need counseling, that's also a big piece of it. And then, scheduling, right now in my job, scheduling is the big push, helping students pick their classes for the following school year. So we kind of go through like what graduation requirements they need, how many years of each subject they need. So that's kind of like, the academic piece that we really focus on as a school counselor, at least in a high school. And then of course, things come up. Students have different issues that are going on at home, outside of school, inside of school. So counseling, helping students with their mental health is also a big part of it as well. So, as far as the school counselor goes, the big three things that you focus on is the career, like college piece. academics, and mental health.
Yeah, and I guess I can give you a background of my day-to-day, more so pre-COVID, because we worked a lot in schools, and obviously given everything going on, a lot of schools are remote or hybrid. So like I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of school-based research. So one of the projects I'm on focuses on organizational skills training with students. So oftentimes these students are diagnosed with ADHD, and they're just having a hard time doing well academically. So kind of helping them figure out a good process of staying organized with their materials. So little things as, where your homework should go, or what do you need to bring to and from school. So we have people on our team that run these interventions and groups in the schools, and kind of my role is like overseeing a lot of that and coordinating a lot of that. So, having conversations with teachers, parents, students, data collection is a big part of it because it is research. So you're meeting with those families to collect data, entering data, in a specific software. You might be analyzing some of it, attending meetings that kind of relate to all of that, so to say. And then also just the administrative side of all of it is kind of just getting everything ready for each school year. So again, as the next couple of months come up for us, we have to plan for the next school year already because it takes a lot of time. We have to start having conversations with the schools that we're working in. Given the pandemic, obviously a lot of that has changed. We actually did a lot of data collection in person and on paper. But now everything's electronic, which is, I think, helpful for a lot of the families we work with because they're busy. They're, taking on a lot of responsibility right now with kids at home. So our day-to-day looks a little bit different in that sense, but I'm hopeful for the next coming months and next school year that we're kind of able to get back in there again. And yeah, kind of a mix of all of that.
So I think I saw, what does it look, the day-to-day tasks in a hospital scene? And I think it can really depend on what your role is at a hospital. So if you're in an inpatient, it can look very different than if you're in an outpatient setting. So it can really depend. My background is actually in mental health, and then I went into school counseling, and I worked for Crozier Chester Medical Center in community mental health. That's where I started. So there could be days where dealing with crisis, and I worked in the crisis center. And then there are days where it's just outpatient and you're managing a lot of other duties. So I think it can really depend on what your role is. It can depend on what your unit you're in. If you're in an adolescent unit, if you're in a maternity unit, if you're in a geriatric unit. So I think that that's also something, is it can depend on what population you might be working with and what are the needs in a hospital setting. So I hope I kind of can answer that. But no matter what, there's a lot of paperwork at some point in time that you need to complete because there is documentation and things that need to happen and insurance that happens with working in mental health. So hopefully that's answers a little bit with that. When I see somebody recently changed to a psych major, and how do you get into the field of clinical psychology? More specifically, an example like a child psychiatrist. So our program, there's a lot of different areas in the psychology world. So there's clinical psychology, counseling psychology, neuropsychology. I could go on, sports psychology. I don't even know, and I should know this, but I don't know the APA answer, but there's, at least what I know, like 56 different divisions of psychology, but there's probably more than that. I just know what number 56 is. So with that, there's lots of different areas of specialty, cognitive psychology. So you really can kind of see how it's very broad, but you can focus. So clinical psychology tends to be more of a doctoral degree. To be a clinical psychologist, you usually have to have a doctoral degree. And to be like a child psychiatrist, that is typically a medical degree because you can prescribe medication. So psychiatrists can prescribe medication, whereas a psychologist cannot prescribe medication. So you can see one is more of a medical degree and another one is a PhD or a PsyD in some ways. I hope I answered that question.
Okay, we still have 5 more minutes. If we have anyone who has any additional questions, thoughts. There's a question from Kelsey around the research requirements in the program.
I will say can I say it depends? No, it depends on what university you might go to. There can be some universities have a greater research component. Ours is not a heavy research. I mean, there's research you're going to have to do in different courses because that's just a part of getting a master's degree, no matter where you go. And I'll leave it to the alumni to speak to their experiences. But, a lot of times research is done because maybe you get onto a research team because you're interested in doing that, or you are thinking about a doctoral program. So therefore you join a research team, but it is not an expectation of the program. So I'll turn it over to alums here.
Go ahead, Gina.
No, you go.
We saw each other move. Yeah, there's not a requirement within the program, but I know for me it was an area of like potential interest or exploration. So I did pursue like research ideas, and with my advisor at the time, just the interest that I had, and kind of from there expanded upon it. So there's definitely opportunities to get involved if you're interested in something specific. Like I'm always the type of person, if there's something that you want to get involved with or you have an interest in, like definitely bring it up and ask, because there could be a way for you to get involved or for you to even create it in some way. So yeah, I was able to get involved in like a research project my second year, but again, wasn't a requirement. It was more of like a personal interest.
So the other thing I want to add, and I think that Leah, Ami, and Gina, all of you either attended a conference, presented at a conference, networked at some kind of a conference. So I think that that's another piece that Gina, think I talked to you in Canada, did I not? Was it Canada? Yeah. I wasn't even a professor on the program yet, and I met Gina. So I say that as in, I think that they've all presented or plan to present at a conference, which is again not a requirement, but it is a great opportunity to get to meet others. And we have a conference here at Temple that is the School Psych Counseling Psych ABA conference that is happening in March. So it's a great opportunity to get to network and meet people, professional development.
Yeah, I really recommend going to a conference. Ami and I did 2 together. We did one in Philadelphia and one in Canada, and it was a great experience. I mean, you meet a lot of people, you learn a lot. I mean, I completely changed my trajectory in what I thought I was the population I wanted to focus on in undergrad. Completely refocused to what I was doing, and then changed my my internship and what I wanted to do there and stuff. You just really like meeting people, even when especially when it's all over the world, and just kind of like, oh, I didn't even know you could do research into that, or oh, I didn't even know that was a population I should consider. And I think like the same thing I'm going to echo with Ami is I actually did much more research in my undergrad than I did in grad school, in terms of like an actual class where like you sit down and you like have to do research and, you know, statistics and that kind of stuff. You do have to take a statistics class in the program, whether you're school or mental health. Gonna throw that out there. But yeah, like unless like if you are really focused on it, or you're thinking about getting your PhD, like there are so many great professors and opportunities at Temple that, you know, if research is something you want to avoid, you can avoid it, certainly. But if it's something that you want to participate in your doctor program, or even just in your professional world afterwards, you can meet a lot of people in the program and outside of the program, and get familiar with what their research is and, maybe join a research team or whatever. I did that in undergrad. It was completely not what I ended up ever learning and, to go into my master's about, but I did join a research team and learned a lot.
Okay, so if you have any other lingering questions, you guys can all email me. I can put my email in the chat. Otherwise, I really want to thank our alumni who've joined us this afternoon. It's been a crazy year, a crazy week. I hope everyone is doing well. But thank you to Leah and Ami and Gina and to Dr. Wildermuth for joining us this afternoon. If you have questions about the program, you can reach out to me and I can redirect them to Dr. Wildermuth as the coordinator for the program, or redirect you to one of our panelists today with their permission if you have a question about their work specifically that you might want to know a little bit more about their unique experiences and kind of professional trajectories. So if you have any questions, again, reach out to me, reach out to Dr. Wildermuth, and then we can kind of redirect you to other individuals as needed. And we lost Leah, but she's coming back in now. Great, there she is. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon and hope to be hearing from you soon.